Watching Smart 24 TV, where we drive your business. And my name is Anthony, your host. And this is Financial Markets, where we look into the daily financial markets here in Uganda, in East Africa as a region, as well as global financial markets, and try to break down and analyze the performance of the stocks, the performance of the debt, that is the debt market, and other financial markets that, of course, are giving you opportunity to be an investor. Now, you're doing a very wonderful job joining us, but you can always get in touch with us via our social media at Smart24 TV on Twitter and on our YouTube live stream in the comments section. You can always leave a few comments if you might. That is at Smart24 TV Live. That's our channel on YouTube. Also, those of you catching us live on GoTV, it is now on channel 394 and 372 on DSTV. Now, yesterday being a Monday, of course, we kicked off a new week of trading, and several stocks, especially the United States stocks, there was an anticipation of a downfall of the major indexes, that is the S&P 500, the industrial average, that's the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the Nasdaq Composite. And yes, the speculations were true. Monday began with still a decline in the value of these indexes, and the Federal Reserve is still tightening its monetary policy regarding, of course, the rates or the yields on the bonds. And of course, bonds are still much more favorable. They look at looking at the interest, of course, we're seeing that they're much more favorable at the moment. Now, that kind of decline in performance actually, when you come back to East Africa, we are still experiencing rather a red market here in Uganda. However, Kenya is also doing a little bit not so good, but not as bad as the other stock markets around the world. Now, remember, financial markets give you an opportunity to be able to invest your savings and make a little extra income. So if you're joining us for the first time, why don't you consider getting yourself at least, to understand some bit of the stocks, some bit of the debt instruments, and that is going to be only by watching this show, where we give you the basics and also help you to understand the value of the market and how you can maneuver the market in order to make money, but also to make use of your savings wisely. Now, like I said, the stock market has been tumbling in the United States. That is, of course, attributed to the Federal Reserve Bank's policies that have been tightened, especially the yields on the bonds, which have been going up and, of course, attracting most of the investors. Now, when we're looking at financial markets, of course, we always talk about the debt instruments and the stock market. These two work usually hand in hand, though usually one is doing good at a time and the other is doing very bad, and the other is doing good, and then this one is doing bad rather. So at the moment, the US market is experiencing this kind of, a standoff between the debt markets and the stock markets on the other hand. The stock markets have declined since last week. We have witnessed a very significant decline in the major indexes, that is the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones, as well as the Nasdaq Composite. And so we are still looking at a bear market on the stock market side. However, on the yield curve, we are seeing that the yields have been going up for the bonds, though recently they have been, of course, kind of pivoting, as most people call it, meaning coming to a kind of a stagnant figure. But at least they're still on the positive end in most of the time. You're seeing at least the curves are on the green side, whereas on the stock market side, things don't look so good at the moment. Of course, some investment advisors, and especially those that have invested for pretty a long time, are saying that this is the best time to buy stock. As the stock market tumbles, it's the time to buy cheap and be able to sell expensive later on, probably when the stock market gets to boom again. But we still have to be very careful and monitor the performance of the stocks here if we are to make the right decision regarding our stock and how we can maneuver these times. Of course, factors including inflation have been pointed out as the main causes of the volatility of the market that we are witnessing right now. The inflation in the United States has gone up. We are also looking at the Russia-Ukrainian war, which is still ongoing and even getting worse with time. And of course, the United States has also been facing a hike in the central bank rate, that is the Federal Reserve Bank rate, which has also been attributed to inflation. So there's still a lot to study, but we have to keep our hands on deck and try to make the most of the stock here as Ugandans, as people participating in these markets. Your money, remember, loses value every time you're keeping it somewhere without making use of it. But also sometimes your money can lose value if you're investing in the wrong things at the wrong time. So you must be very careful as you make your investment moves. Make sure you're investing where you are able to see at least a long-term gain, a long-term vision. Have a long-term vision or a long-term perspective as you actually try to make your investments. Today, I'll start with the Nairobi market. Particularly the Nairobi market performed a little bit better than all other markets in East Africa closing Monday. And now we're seeing that the Nairobi Stock Exchange went up by 2.69. That is the all-share index, which is the benchmark for the Nairobi market. And this was a 2.18% appreciation in the day for the all-share index there in Nairobi. And now, so we had about, we had close to about 49 companies that participated in the trades on Nairobi Stock Exchange. And the day ended with close to 20 gainers and 21 losers on the stock market in Nairobi. East African Portland Cement Company led the gainers after having appreciated close to 7.24% of its share price, closing at 8.0 Kenyan shillings, whereas Home Africa came in at a 5.71% price appreciation, and Safaricom gained about 4.65% on their price valuation there on the stock market. And Nairobi Business Ventures at a 4.52% price appreciation was also another top gainer there on the Nairobi market. On the losing side, however, we had BK Group, who came out at the bottom with a price depreciation of 8.4% on the stock market in Kenya, closing at 30.00 Kenyan shillings per share. He was followed by Longhorn Publishers, also down the group, who came in at a 4.56% price depreciation as well. And Car and General Kenya also lost about 4.33% on the stock market there in Kenya. Britam Holdings lost close to 4.25% on the Kenyan stock market there in Nairobi. And roughly that is what happened on the stock market in Nairobi. Things didn't look so good on other indices as well, particularly the NSE 20. This, remember, tracks the aggregate performance of the top 20 companies on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Now with a 0.04% decline in a day, the index has also registered a 2.38% decline in a week's time, and about close to 11.87% loss in year to date. However, the NSE 25, as always, performed slightly better after having appreciated close to about 1.33% for the day on Monday, and 2.17% was the decline now registered for the week, looking at the weekly basis calculation there. The index lost close to 2.17%. And in the terms of 1 week, we have 18.94% loss there on the NSE 25 in terms of year-to-date performance. Now, the trades in Nairobi, of course, following the general election in Nairobi, we witnessed a little decline, rather, in the performance of the stocks generally in Nairobi, as of course many investors were uncertain what could happen after the election. And this was also fueled further by the Federal Reserve rate increment or hiking, which attracted foreign investors to go onto the United States debt market to be able to acquire treasury bonds there that, of course, were coming in at a very favorable interest rate. This is, of course, a challenge that we still have in Africa. Influx of foreign investors. Foreign investors are really good when we're investing in companies. Of course, they come with big dollars, they come with big money, they come with, a lot of money to invest in our companies here. But the reverse is true when they actually pull out. They take out huge chunks of money, huge chunks of capital from the companies because they sell rapidly, they sell very rapidly, leading to stumbling, of course, of the stock market, looking at also price value decline, and so many other things that, of course, could occur. And so we want to encourage our local investors here in Uganda, our local investors in Kenya, local investors in Tanzania and Rwanda to be the frontliners, really, when it comes to investing in our stock markets. We should be the first and then they come second. But if they're the first and the big, they take the bigger part, which is true, actually, looking at, for example, the stock market in Kenya, the foreign investors take close to over, let's say, 55%, 55%, and the local investors only take about 45%. So it is still quite a challenge, which we have to address if we are to make progress in our stock markets here in Uganda, in Kenya, and in Tanzania, and of course East Africa as a whole. So we encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to be aggressive when it comes to investment. Big countries have done this. Big economies, rather, have also been able to succeed only because they have a very active and vibrant stock market and a very vibrant and diverse financial market. Looking at the products they have derivatives, they have options, futures, they have all these other things that people could actually have to choose from. ETFs, to mention but a few. And talking about ETFs, Altex East Africa is your number one private exchange, and Altex is telling you that they are now enabling you to access different treasury bonds across East Africa. That is to say, in Uganda, in Kenya, Tanzania, as well as in Uganda. You may wonder how you're going to do this. You need to only dial *292# and follow the prompts. When you do this, Altex will definitely give you the option either to buy or sell, and you will be able to buy using your MTN mobile money, and you will pay by Momo Pay, and that is, of course, after their partnership with MTN Uganda. But also Airtel users, you can still now also be able to use Airtel Money by dialing *292# and following the prompts. And of course, their rates are quite favorable, and of course, they're not fixed. They have a range, and currently they have about bonds with 2 years, 3 years maturity, 5 years maturity, with rates ranging from about 14% to about 16.7%. So you can see that the return is quite good, and the service is very accessible. They're making this convenient as it can be, so we can have as many local investors as possible in our markets here in Uganda. The market at Altex East Africa opens at exactly 15 minutes past the hour of 8 and closes at 15 minutes past the hour of 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. Altex East Africa doing something new. Of course, check them out also on their Twitter handle at Altex East Africa for more information. Now, back to the stock market in Kenya. We have already looked at the top gainers here. We had 20 top gainers and 21 losers on the stock market in Kenya. However, at the end of the day of the week, of course, at the end of the first weekday of trading, we had close to about 25,851,800 shares that were traded on the Nairobi stock market here in East Africa, and closing with about 1,417 deals that were made on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Now, this corresponds to a market value of over 709,172,953 Kenyan shillings. which were traded. Compared with the previous day of trading, there was a decline in the volume, closing about 41% decline, and a 34% decline in the turnover, as well as a 4% decline in the deals. If you are following the stock market on Thursday, there was a huge movement of on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. There was a huge volume there coming in from different companies that traded on Thursday, and actually the turnover was actually the biggest for the week, and I think for the month so far. And so this decline, of course, came in because of the excessive activity that we had on Thursday there on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. However, currently also the Nairobi Stock Exchange equity capitalization has declined, and now currently is at 1.97 trillion Kenyan shillings. And yeah, this is it for the stock market in Kenya. Remember, for our investors here in Uganda, if you want to invest in the stock market in Kenya, it's quite simple. You must have, of course, a stockbroker who is dealing for you within the Kenyan market. And most of our stockbrokers here in Uganda still have subsidiaries or branches in the Kenyan market. So you can still access the Kenyan stock through, for example, SBG Securities. We have Crested Capital, as well as Dare and Blair. All these can be able to access the Nairobi markets. They have a bigger market with over 65 companies and with different products. We have ETFs and as well as derivatives and several other features that, of course, spice up the market there in Nairobi. And if you're wondering what an ETF is, of course, an ETF is a very simple thing. You have a stock, for example, you have a stock market index with several companies. Let's talk about, for example, in Nairobi, the NSE 20. The NSE 20, the Nairobi Stock Exchange 20, represents the top 20 companies that are listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Now, these companies, of course, have different share prices, they have different market capitalizations, and so on. However, you can choose to invest in all these companies in order to diversify risk. Now, this is through what we call an exchange-traded fund, or an ETF. An ETF helps you to be able to buy a little bit of stock in every company, at least that is in a particular index, rather than putting all your money within a single company or within 2 companies or 3 companies. You can rather spread out the risk. And this is always what many investment advisors have advised, that the more you diversify, the more you alleviate the risk. You kind of pull yourself out of the danger zone, of putting all your eggs in one basket. And that's the most dangerous thing that could happen to you on the stock market or any other market when it comes to trading. So the Nairobi Stock Exchange gives you ETFs. These ETFs are exchange traded funds that help you invest in a diversified manner, so that you keep your stocks here and there and there and there. So if one company is losing and another is doing good, probably you could have a balance somewhere, so you don't have to have an outright loss whenever things don't go your way. Now, still looking at the Kenyan stock market, we've already mentioned 20 were the top gainers on the Nairobi Stock Exchange there. However, East African Portland led them. Let's look at East African Portland Cement. What is East African Portland Cement? Now, this is a Kenyan-based company that is engaged in the manufacture and the sale of cement here in East Africa. The company sells under a brand name called the Blue Triangle, and the Blue Triangle is used for, of course, cementing, mortar, and concrete building applications. The company also uses, of course, also manufactures different custom-made cement products, including those used in construction, as well as precast concrete items such as we have paving blocks, tiles, building blocks, and pre-stressed concrete components. East African Portland Cement concrete pavers are used in the construction of roads, hydraulic and marine structures, walkways, parking areas, petrol stations, and go-down flows. Now, those are the products that this company deals in. Now, on the stock market, we have the market capitalization, and of course, most indices are weighted by their market capitalization. And currently, East African Portland Cement has a total of about close to 720 million Kenyan shillings worth of market capitalization or worth of shares. And this represents close to 0.037% of the entire equities market on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. A little bit slim, but significant still. And this company is the 48th most valuable on the stock market in Nairobi there, out of the 65 listed companies, of course. Now, yesterday's opening price was 8.0 shillings and closing price was 8.0. And they had a total trade of close to over 100 shares, meaning they had about 800 Kenyan shillings worth of shares or turnover that was traded on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Their earnings per share ended at 20.97 Kenyan shillings, and the price to earnings ratio is standing at 38% or 0.38. And when you look at their shares outstanding, they have about close to 90 million shares that are floated on Nairobi Stock Exchange there. And currently, they're on a 1-week gain of 7.2 and a 4-week gain of 4.7 and 3 months loss still 4.73% and a 6-month gain of about 15.9%. But on the year to date, they have gained close to 20.1%. Looking back, they ended the day with a price of 8 shillings after having gained from 7.46 Kenyan shillings. And that was a 7.2% gain, which was the highest recorded for the daily trade. And having gained 20.1% now on their year-to-date performance, the company currently is one of the top-ranking companies in terms of year-to-date performance. And to be specific, it is the 10th company that is, of course, in terms of year-to-date performance. On the other side of things, when you look at their trades, they're not so good at trades at the moment. They're the 54th most traded out of 65 companies within the last 3 months on the Nairobi stock market. And this is evidenced by the fact that they have only traded close to just about 47,300 shares from the 8th of July to the 7th of October 2022. And these are currently valued at close to 351,552 Kenyan shillings at the moment. That is East African Portland Cement for you. When you look at the frequency of activity, you have trading on the 7th, on the 6th, on the 5th, and 4th, and 29th. So meaning recently there's been attention towards the company. And of course, whenever there's attention towards the company, definitely you need to make your own research and get to know why people buying stock in this company. Why is this company becoming the center of attention? Maybe it's a temporary thing. Maybe it's just something that's going to pass. I don't know, but at least you must always have information at your fingertips to give you reasons to be able to invest in a particular company here on the stock exchange. Let's see, looking at the losing side, nothing much really to look at apart from BK Group, who came out last. When you look at BK Group, this is a bank of Kigali, Rwanda, and this is a Rwanda-based financial services company that operates via 3 segments. That is retail banking, corporate banking, as well as central treasury. The retail banking segment includes the banking services such as the current savings accounts and fixed deposits to individuals, retail lending, and so on, which are mainly customer loans and mortgage-based lending and mortgages. When you look at the corporate banking segment, it encompasses mainly fixed deposits, overdrafts, loans, and other credit facilities that are offered by the bank, both for local and foreign currencies. The central treasury segment includes funding and centralized management activities through borrowings, issues of debt securities, that is treasury bonds and treasury bills, and investing in liquid assets such as short-term placements and corporate government-based securities as well. Now, the bank has been listed since the 30th of November 2018, just about close to 5 years of listing. And currently, the company has a total market capitalization of 26.9 billion, and it's the 12th most valuable on the Nairobi Stock Exchange via market capitalization, representing close to 1.37% of the entire equity market in Nairobi Stock Exchange. The company declined yesterday after losing close to losing about close to 2.75 Kenyan shillings, and 8.4% decline. That was registered on the Nairobi Stock Exchange on the Bank of Kigali there in Nairobi. The day's low price was 29.5, and the day's high price was 30.00 Kenyan shillings, and closing with over a trade of 64,800 shares on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. The company registered a gross turnover of 1.94 million Kenyan shillings, which was a pretty good margin there for the company. The company began the year with a price of 29.0 Kenyan shillings and has gained so far 3.45% on that price, and currently is ranking the number 22nd in terms of year-to-date performance. Well, in terms of trading, it's still ranking very highly with the 34th position in terms of traded volumes for the past 3 months. That is from the 8th of July to the 7th of October. The company has traded close to 476,900 shares on the stock market there in Nairobi, at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to go further into the Nairobi Stock Exchange, but generally looking at the market, it wasn't so bad, not so good, average performance there. But there's a lot of hope in the Nairobi market. Of course, the new president, William Ruto, is interested in business, as he calls himself a hustler. And so we expect even more from Nairobi very soon during the term of Mr. William, during his term. And so, yes, invest, and don't you give up, and try to diversify your portfolio. That's the key to success in investing in financial markets. We're going to take a quick breather, and we return with a brief summary of the Uganda Stock Exchange and what to see, of course, in the day forward, looking forward as we come to the middle of the week, and what we should expect. Stay with us. My name is Anthony SSEBAALE. You're watching Smart 24 TV.